Hey guys, welcome back to my channel today. In today's video, we are going to be talking about a brand new NATASHA DENONA palette that I know you guys are super excited about. This is the NATASHA DENONA Triochrome palette, and this is actually her second holiday release. She's already released the Mini Zendo mini palette, as well as the highlighter and 2 lipsticks. But this video, of course, is going to be highlighting this palette, showing you guys how it looks inside, the swatches, how they compare to other palettes, which I do have one palette that I think is pretty similar to this one. So there's definitely some similar vibes there. We're also going to be talking about if I think that this big palette is worth the money, because this is actually a bigger palette from her. It is my job to buy and test these babies out so that you invest your money wisely, and that's what we're going to be doing today with this latest number. So if you guys want to know all my thoughts on the Triochrome palette from NATASHA DENONA, then just keep watching. Let's get right on into it. This is, of course, like I said, NATASHA DENONA's latest holiday release. This is set to release in Sephora US, Sephora Canada, and other regions of the world November 3rd. The outer packaging of this palette, though, you guys, is so cool because not only is the outer cardboard packaging matching the inner palette packaging itself, it has that duochrome shift in the packaging already. So you do see that purple, blue, gold kind of shift as you kind of bend it in the light. So it is a really cool palette, and it is a palette that is pulling inspiration from her chromium liquid shadows. We will talk about that also. So this palette on the inside is so gorgeous. To me, it does have some interesting bright color vibes. And then in the center of the palette, we have the trio of duochromes. This is how this palette got the name, basically Triochrome, because right dead center, right here, and going totally upwards, these 3 are duochrome shades, and because there's 3 of them out of 15, it is the Triochrome palette. The rest of the shades actually are matte, so she has released quite a few shimmer heavy palettes in the past, actually in the more recent past. The Glam palette here is actually one of her more recent ones, and this is a midi size. There are so many shimmers in here, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mattes out of 15. So only a third are matte in here. There's tons of shimmers in this one. This bronze palette is the exact same way. This was also, I believe, a later summer release. And this one too has a ton of shimmers, but not a lot of mattes. This is something that I think a lot of people were a little bit frustrated with, especially those of you that like to anchor your looks with a matte. There aren't that many mattes in here, so if you love shimmer, great. Just like me, I'm a shimmer girl, so these were totally fine for me. But if you wanted more of a balance, then these 2 palettes kind of under-delivered there. This palette has the 12 mattes and the 3 shimmers, so of course we have now a matte heavy palette. And this is a very interesting color story to me. I'm not sure what you guys think of this, but right off the top, I'm a makeup enthusiast. I don't have formal makeup artistry training, so I'm not like a pro makeup artist by any means. I just enjoy makeup and I love playing with it, and I love owning it and reviewing it and helping you guys out also. So this is a palette that the color story to me is going to be a little bit more challenging. And the only reason I say that is because this is one that has like those bright greens, those yellowy tones. The purples are going to be easy to put looks together. I think that's probably the easiest part of this palette are the purples. And I think that's kind of the saving grace of it. If it was too kind of all over the place, I think it would have been really hard for people. But the middle row I think will be easy, and then the duochromes will be easy, but the other ones are going to be a little bit more challenging. You're going to have to think outside the box a little bit when it comes to creativity, because just my opinion, obviously, this is a very versatile palette with all the colors, but they do have some interesting jumps in shade. So for those of you that are beginner, I think you're gonna be challenged here a little bit, just putting looks together that don't look too clashed. So for myself, I stuck with something really safe for today's look, but we will get to that tutorial in just a second. So the story of how I got this palette right away. Now, I did not get this in PR. I am not on her PR list. That is a dream that has not happened yet. But this palette is available in select Selfridges stores in the United Kingdom right now. Just so you guys know, the important note of that is in store only. I happened to get a couple tags from some of you that this palette was available in some of those stores, and I'm in Canada, I'm not in the UK, unfortunately, so I couldn't just go over there and pick it up. So I actually called the store. I got up early because of the UK time difference to try to get this palette sent to me, because not only do I have a US address, I was able to get a UK address for mailing stuff out too, which has been awesome. And if they don't ship to Canada, they could have just shipped to the UK for me, but they had a very strict policy, in store only, not to be transferred out, not to be ordered online, not to be shipped out. I asked my community for a little assistance, and you guys were so sweet. Like, I know there's going to be other creators that are going to be watching this video. I'm going to say, with all due respect, I love you guys, but my community is the best, okay? Like, I'm just gonna brag on my community for a second. The most helpful, the nicest. One of my friends stepped up to the plate. Her name is Panna. I'm going to link her Instagram because she has an Instagram, like a brand new Instagram makeup blog on Instagram, and she's so, so sweet. And she's like, I can totally order it for you and just pay me back. Girl, how freaking nice is that? So she actually went through all the trouble of going to Selfridges on foot. Well, not on foot. I think she drove there, but you understand. Sent it to me, which is so sweet. And then I just paid her back the postage and the price of the palette. So this palette was 111 English pounds. So that is actually the same price as the Biba palette, which I'm going to talk to you guys about right here. And this is the all neutral Biba palette. This is the exact same price as the Triochrome. It also is the exact same size. So I'm going to assume very safely that the US price is going to be the exact same as the US price for Biba as of current. So the US price for Biba is $129. The Canadian price is $170. So that's what we're going to expect for the Triochrome. Like I said, this is going to be available November 3rd at Sephora. So let's talk about how this palette performs next. For my look today, I actually started out with my primer. I always do that with my eyes, the Smashbox 24-hour primer. You guys know I love that one. The first shade I picked up is up here. This is called Rephr, which is green in French, if you guys didn't know. And this is a matte color that I put all over the lid. Now this is kind of like a greeny yellow color. It is really, really interesting and something I don't have a ton of in my collection. There was some kick up in the pan when I picked it up with my brush. I used a Goss 16, so that is a natural haired brush, and it is a more fluffier brush, really nice for blending out into the crease, into transition, and I felt like it blended out and built up really, really well. This is definitely a shadow that I'm impressed with, and I didn't see any fallout whatsoever on my eye, which was awesome. The next step I went into was one of the duochromes. Now I picked up Scarab, so I went all over my lid with a Rephr number 1, which is actually more of a flatter brush, and I wanted to see how it would perform with a brush first, because these are so ultra creamy. I just had a feeling that I could definitely pick it up with a finger and really have that pigment impact, but I know a lot of you guys don't like using your fingers. You'd rather just use a brush and just build it up. So with the brush application, I thought it did a great job too. And with the shimmers, I was wondering if I was going to get some fallout, but I actually didn't. So that's amazing. It also builds up really beautifully, and it also translates on the lid super, super well. So this is obviously the showcasing shade in my look today. It has that nice duochrome kind of effect to it, which as you turn and as you're talking to people, it looks green and looks kind of that yellow gold shift in certain lights. Really, really stunning. Then I decided, because I wanted to make it extremely, extremely amplified on the eye, I did take my fingertip and just lightly press over a lighter layer over top. This is where I got the tiniest amount of fallout, you guys. Like actually the tiniest. It was so, so tiny, like 3 flecks or something. So easy just to brush that off with a powder brush. You don't have to worry about heavy fallout with this palette. I'm actually going to show you how Scarab swatches live so you guys can see. Like, it's so pretty. That's just one swipe. It's so, so gorgeous. Like, I'm definitely obsessed with this shade. Now for the last shadow that I used in this look today, we're going all the way to the left side of the palette. This is another matte shade, and this is called Scrap. So Scrap is an interesting shade too. It is something that I really don't own in my collection currently. It's kind of like a deep green / brown shade. So it is very, very interesting. Certainly not something I have in my collection on repeat, but this is a shade that is truly, truly unique unique to me. I just think that this palette as a whole does offer quite a few truly new shades to my collection. This is a shade I used at the corner of the lid so that I could really get that dynamic kind of dimension to the look, really kind of deepening that and just, you know, getting a little bit of a smoky look. But because of my hooded eyes, I do use a small brush on purpose. I did talk about this in a couple videos already, but I really love a small, really focused brush for hooded eyes in particular when you're doing detailed work like that. When you have that really, really deep crease along your eyelid, which is where your eyes fold, so to speak, it does help to just start near the lash line and then kind of fade upward so that you don't have pigment start to separate along the crease. You can tell when you have just too much there because it just looks like a space in between. So do make sure that you are going very, very detailed with that. And using a small brush really helps with this, but just stay patient, just build it up nicely. This scrap shade did a great job of doing that nice building up. And once again, no fallout. I'm gonna actually live swatch the other two duochromes because I know you guys probably want to see that. There's that one. Definitely not a good live swatch, but you see what I mean. It just goes and goes and goes. And then the last one is right here. You can see here how crazy pigmented they are and how one swipe you get so much pigment punch like right away. The duochromes in here, they do have that same similarity to some of the chromium liquid shadows that she's done before in a previous release, except of course that these are powder. So the chromium ones are gonna have much more of that foiled metallic look. Even though these are fairly metallic, the liquid ones are going to give you obviously much more of a foiled, like brighter foiled look because just simply of the texture of them. With regards to Scarab is still more greeny gold in here. I think it has a slight pull of blue in the liquid form, but that's really the only shade that has the exact same name between the two lines. This one here is called Kinetic, and this one has like a purpley blue shift, and then this one is called Color Flip, and this one has like a kind of pinky purple, switching to kind of like a deep purpley green. It's really, really interesting, and these are also how they look swatched just separately. I'm going to show you the full palette right now also because we are getting to that time of the video. These three are definitely the showcase when it comes to this palette. I would have preferred more shimmers in this palette, and that's just because I lean more towards shimmer. If I picked like matte or shimmer, I'm a girl that always wants to wear shimmer. I rarely just wear a matte shade or just a matte look. So for me and my preferences, more shimmers would have been great, but I am not mad at this one. I think that it's really nice that she offered something definitely different with regards to the types of finishes because there's been quite a few of her palettes lately that have been very shimmer heavy. So here are the swatches right here, you guys, and I decided to go row by row because there's quite a few shades in here. There are 15, and I really like how these rows are kind of cohesive with each other. The first shade is called Scrap, so you can see it does have that kind of dark green quality. And the next one is called Androdite. This one is a very cool shade too because it's kind of got that whiteness with a little bit of like a really light green blue. It's really, really cool. Also a matte shade. The next one is the Scarab Duochrome. Then we have Ion, which is also a matte, and this is a really gorgeous yellow shade with some slight green to it. And then the last one is Rephr, which is that yellowy slash very slight greeny shade, also a matte. The next row is all of our beautiful purples. The first one is called Naga, a gorgeous pastel light purple. Then we have Manganese, which is a beautiful medium purple tone. Next we have the Duochrome, which is Kinetic, and this is the one that has that purpley blue shift, really, really beautiful. Next we have Redox, or Redox. This purple to me has some gray qualities to it, which makes it pretty unique also. And then lastly we have Tungsten, which is that really nice light purple matte at the end. The last row here from left to right, the first one is Vertex. This is a really cool matte too because it does have a slight gray quality to it also, but very, very slight. The next matte is Plutonium, and this is like a really cool yellow orange. What I will say about this shade is that it felt a little bit dry compared to the rest of the mattes. So upon swatches, This one drags slightly more. Next we have Color Flip, which is that gorgeous purpley / greeny kind of shift to this one. So this is the third duochrome. Next we have Garmin, which is that gorgeous light brown. The last one is Diatonic, and this one kind of has a slight peachy kind of pinkness to it, but it's also more muted. It's not super bright. This one also is a matte. Now Diatonic also was a little bit drier upon swatch, and just comparatively to the other mattes, the only two are in that bottom row like I mentioned. So Diatonic being that last one on the right side, which is right here, and then Plutonium, which is over here. Both of these, although they still are fairly pigmented, they're just a little bit drier when you swatch them on an arm, but I will test them on the eye as well and just see if there is any like deficiencies to them comparatively to the other mattes. This is a first impression, obviously, because I haven't tested out every single shade. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel because I will be doing a follow-up with my final thoughts of this palette when I've tested out every single shade. Now let's get into the comparisons because the palette that this reminded me of right away, you guys, like even when I saw the promotion pictures, I was like, is that not my friend Mel Thompson's palette? It looks very similar to Tiny Marvels, which is the Mel Thompson and Sydney Grace collaboration. So I'm going to show you guys exactly what I mean. I do have a picture of both of these palettes side by side so you guys can see that, but this is the color story here. So we do have that bright green, the bright purples. We do have a pinky color that looks similar. This looks like a similar color story. I wouldn't say it's like par for par, like pan for pan, the exact same thing. It's certainly not a dupe or anything, but it does have some very similar highlighting features. This palette does have that bright green, that bright purple. These are some really key characteristics to this palette, plus there's some duochromes in here too. What I can say is the duochromes here are nowhere near like the ones in Triochrome. So that's a good thing. There is the Scarab shade in here actually. So I'm going to show you guys exactly what I mean. This is Scarabs from Sydney Grace. You can see it has a beautiful pinky purple blue shift. There's nothing like that in the NATASHA Denona. You can see here that all of them are distinctly different. So we do have like a purple duochrome quality to that last one on the far left, but it's not the same at all. So both of the Scarab shades are different. I didn't actually swatch Scarab, but I'll show you Scarab, which I have on my eye today. You can see it's extremely different. Scarab is on the far right, so it's clearly a greeny gold. The Sydney Grace one is definitely a different duochrome shade. So here is the picture of both of the palettes side by side, and you can see here that there are a couple shades right away that look very similar. So I decided to swatch some of the purples as well as that peachy pink color and see how similar they actually were. So here we have some of these side by sides from NATASHA Denona Triochrome and then the Sydney Grace palette. The first trio that I compared is Mega or Maga from NATASHA Denona and Jewel Bee from Sydney Grace. And you can see that they are different shades. They do have some similar qualities, but honestly, the NATASHA one is much more pink and much more bright. And then we have the two on the far right, and you can see that they are closer, but the NATASHA one, I would say, has more of an orange quality, whereas the Sydney one has more of a pink quality. That is Diatonic versus Flutterbee in Sydney Grace. The last duo is Tungsten versus Lovebug. Now these two, I would say, are the most similar when it comes to the palettes. So now for my conclusion of the first impression. Now here's what I'm going to say, you guys. I'm going to say that this is a very beautiful palette. I think it is one that is worth the money if, and only if, you see yourself working with these kind of colors. This is a very, very expensive palette. At $129 US or $170 Canadian, it is a steep, steep palette. We're not talking about the midi size. We're talking about a full size product. So make sure the color story speaks to you. Take a look at the swatches again and see if it's something that you can visualize on your eye, and take into consideration your skill level as well as, you know, how creative you are, especially with color. And there's a lot of you guys out there that really just like neutrals and rarely dip into color, especially like pastel-y bright color, right? So make sure that this is something that you actually see yourself using, because this is a very steep investment. This is going to be in the VIB sale though, in theory. I did have a couple questions about that. November 3rd is the release date, and it is in the VIB sale dates. So in theory, we should be able to get 20% off if you're Rouge, 15 if you're VIB, 10 if you're BI. So that's also something to think about, because it's going to cut that price a little bit lower, which is awesome. If you have the Tiny Marvels palette, I think a lot of you guys are going to ask me, if you have Tiny Marvels, marbles. If you have tiny marvels, do you need the Triochrome? Here's what I'm gonna say. This might be an unpopular opinion. I don't think you need both. I just don't think so. Unless you're a really crazy diehard NATASHA DENONA fan. And like I said, you see yourself wearing those types of colors a lot. It has some bright purples, it has a green in it, it has a peachy pink, and I would argue that this color story is a little bit easier to work with across beginner, level, intermediate to expert. Obviously expert, you know, they're gonna be able to put a look together with this Triochrome palette too, but just kind of looking at the beginner and or looking at somebody that doesn't play with that kind of color a ton, I don't think you need both, but don't hate me for saying that. This is still a good product so far. My first impressions are strong, like I said. I do have my eye on these two here because they did drag a little bit, so I'll keep you guys posted on that. But let me know your thoughts on this palette. Is this one that you're going to get? Do you have any other questions about it? I'd be happy to let you guys know what I think. Thank you so much to my friend Panna once again. Do check out her Instagram because she does a ton of work over there and she's very, very nice. You guys would love her. And she is the one that sourced this palette for me. So thank you so much once again. I really hope this video was helpful. And until my next one, guys, take care and stay safe. Bye, guys.
You and me, everything that we've been through has made us strong. You won't believe we've had our gray, but somewhere there's a light inside.